Welcome to the Panic Room, where we talk about all things panic-inducing. I am the Queen of Panic. Warning, some episodes may contain content that may be disturbing to others. Viewer discretion is advised. Now let the games begin.
I've never been a saint, but I have been a terrible sinner. I'm not looking for empathy, because I deserve none. What I deserve may come from me still. I'm writing this because I owe a debt, and no matter what happens to me, that debt is to be paid. I'm sorry, Peggy. I'm killing Quiet Casey tonight. Her name was Peggy, easily the ugliest girl in the school, if not the entire town of Oak Grove. She was a bookworm with Coke bottle glasses and a haircut straight out of 1985. She also had a terrible stutter. All of us were horrible to her since her family moved to town in 3rd grade. Hannah Stone was my best friend, was the first one to single out Peggy when she was the new kid. She started calling her Piggy. Everyone else just jumped in from there. No one ever really wanted anything to do with her, except to make her life hell. I have my share of that. I have to own it. In 5th grade, Simon Lucas was the new kid, who had just moved to our town 2 weeks before school started. Peggy was the first person he talked to. He moved in next door to her, and he hung out with her for that first 2 weeks. Peggy had finally found a friend. I remember seeing them laughing and riding their bikes together over and over down the big hill on Dawson Street. The first day of school, he even sat with her at lunch. But by the end of the day, Simon realized that he was becoming friends with an outcast. The kiss of death for any new kid. Simon never said a word to her after that day. Peggy was alone again. When Peggy turned 16, her parents scrapped up enough money to buy her a little beater that smoked and rattled down the road. You could literally hear it coming from a mile away. Peggy was so proud of that car. The innards may have been shot, but she kept it immaculate on the outside. There was never a bug in the grill or dirt in her wheels. She would even wipe it down during lunch break with one of those weird cloth things you could buy off the television. Hannah decided it would be funny to play a prank. So one night, she stole the car right out of Peggy's driveway. The next morning, a smoldering husk of what used to be Peggy's car was found in the school parking lot. No one was blamed for it, and no one was going to be. The town was just as guilty as the school for its disdain of Peggy. I know exactly who did it. There were 10 of us, and we had dumped gasoline all over it. Hannah and I both threw a match. I didn't own it then, but I do now. The next day, Peggy confronted Hannah in front of the school. At first, we all assumed that there was going to be a fight. Instead, Peggy burst into tears and just asked,
"Why?"
I don't even know what you're talking about, Piggy.
I know it was you.
Prove it, bitch. Why do you care anyway? That car was an old piece of shit.
My parents saved for 4 years to buy that for me.
There was an awkward silence. That's when I first started to wake up. That's when I first started to realize that I had an ugly heart. Hannah started laughing.
It took your parents 4 years, and that's all they could afford? God, you're way more poor than I thought.
Everyone laughed. Everyone but me and Simon Lucas. We didn't laugh, but we also didn't do anything when Peggy ran away crying. Peggy went back to riding her bike around town, but 2 months later, someone stole that too. It was senior year when Peggy got pregnant. She never said who the father was, but we all knew that it was Cody Baldwin. She had a crush on Cody for years, and even though he ignored her, he never really picked on her. I guess that's what made him attractive to her. She was in the right place at the right time, and she finally told him how she felt, and they went to bed together. It meant something to her. He was drunk, and she was there. That's what it meant to him. He told her as much when she told him she was pregnant. Even though we knew who the father was, for some reason that didn't stop Hannah from starting the rumor that it was her father who knocked her up. Everyone in school picked it up and ran with it. Everyone started to call her Piggy Preggers. She could have gone on home studies, but for some reason, she insisted on finishing the school year at school with everyone else. Hannah even started rumors that her baby was going to be some kind of mutilated monster because of incest. A hideous thing that would haunt the town. Someone drew a crude picture on Peggy's locker of the monster baby with 2 clawed arms and no legs. I look back on it now, and I have no excuses for myself. I was a cruel shadow of a human who enjoyed hurting someone. I have to own that. What I am amazed by is that by the time, the whole town of Oak Grove seemed to hate her for no particular reason, and she knew it. The town othered her, and they all loved to do it. Maybe that's why she stayed in school. Maybe she never truly let anyone get to her, until the bad day happened. The day before spring break, I tried to apologize to Peggy at school, just after first period. She smiled back at me.
You feel bad, huh? Little quiet Casey? Well, maybe if you feel bad, you'd stand up and say something next time your little friends gang up on me.
Only an hour later, I saw a group of my friends walking behind Peggy through the hallway of the second floor. Hannah seemed to have it in for Peggy more than she usually did, and she was trying everything to get under Peggy's skin. She had made a catchy little earworm that she repeated over and over whenever Peggy was within earshot.
Piggy Preggers, with her legs up high, her daddy put it in and let the baby batter fly.
Hannah repeated it 4 times while she walked behind her, and when Peggy finally got to the edge of the stairs, she turned toward Hannah and pointed a finger.
Hannah, you need to...
It happened so fast. To this day, I don't know if Hannah meant to push her or if it was just an accident. What I do know is that 5 seconds later, Peggy was face down on the floor at the bottom of the stairs, with blood spilling out of her head. And somehow, when we were asked what happened, none of us knew. Quiet Casey. She was rushed to the hospital. I still remember everyone standing outside of the school when she was loaded in the back of the ambulance. Cody Baldwin watched her go in silence, and as the ambulance pulled away, several of us looked over at him. She was carrying his baby after all. I asked him if he was all right. He jerked around to the sound of my voice, like I broke him out of a trance.
Oh yeah, it's just weird, that's all. I always thought she was going to come after me for child support someday. I think I might have just dodged a bullet.
She was in a coma for 7 months. I moved away to go to college, but Hannah kept me in the loop. She told me that she heard when Piggy finally woke up, the only thing she asked about was her baby. They told her that the baby died the day she fell down the stairs. Peggy never said another word. According to town legend, her eyes glazed over into a 1,000-yard stare that never broke, and her mouth upturned into a slight smile. She stayed that way until they finally gave up on her and transferred her into a mental hospital, about an hour outside of town. I listened to Hannah telling me this story, and there were those little noises and annotations that let me know that she was smiling on the other end while she was talking. After she was done, I was silent. Why was I ever friends with this person? Why had I been so cruel to someone for no reason?
Casey, are you still there?
Yeah,
Can I ask you a question?
okay.
Is it wrong that I don't feel bad? Casey? Hello? Casey? Casey? Hello?
I had no words for her. I hung up the phone. I ran to the bathroom and threw up all over the floor before I could make it to the toilet. I needed to change who I was. Years went by. My parents stayed in Oak Grove, but I wouldn't go back to visit them. Instead, I would ask them to come stay with me. Every time they brought up my old hometown, I was quick to change the subject. One day, I finally got up the courage to tell my parents what exactly happened to Peggy and my part in everything. To my surprise, they shrugged it off. They told me not to worry.
Bad things happen, honey.
As the years went on, I talked to them less and less. I noticed that my parents seemed to change for the worse. They were more bitter, easier to anger, and more apathetic towards people in general. 12 years after I left my hometown, my parents were involved in a car accident, and I lost them both. I had no choice but to go back to settle all of their affairs. As I drove to Oak Grove, I noticed the state of the town. Everything was run down, trash everywhere, boarded up businesses, stray dogs whose stomachs were rubbing their backbones. Even the lake where we all used to hang out was little more than a fetid pond that reeked of dead fish. The people I saw walking around town moved in an aimless way, and all the American flags from every porch were ragged and threadbare. The church had burned down a few years before, and the rubble had never been cleared. Most of the oaks that lined the streets were dead or dying. When I finally pulled into the driveway of my old house, I barely recognized it. My parents had always taken care of their home when I was growing up. I had only been gone for 12 years, but it looked like it had aged more than 30 or 40 without the slightest effort of upkeep. When I went inside, I was met with the home of people who had never thrown anything away. Piles and piles of garbage and newspapers and food wrappers and all kinds of junk. My parents had been living like animals, and I had no idea. I tried my best to clean up a little, but it was a lost cause. I heard a knock at the door. I should have never opened it.
Casey?
Hannah looked far older than she should. Deep lines were set in her brow, and there were streaks of gray in her dark hair. She was also very pregnant.
Casey, oh my God, hi.
She hugged me as tightly as she could manage with her stomach between us. Hi.
I didn't know you were in town. I'm so sorry about your parents.
Thank you. There was a long silence, and I realized that I had perfect excuse for not inviting her in. I opened the door so she could see the state of the old house. I'd invite you in, but it's a little crowded in here.
Oh, well, I understand. You come by my place. Have you got a minute?
I don't know if I can. I've got a lot of stuff to do here.
Oh, come on. Just for a little bit. Let's catch up.
Her house was worse than my parents', although she didn't seem to notice. The outside was a monument of outrageous neglect, and the stairs that led up her front door were cracked and covered in a thick brown mold. Inside was almost an obstacle course of refuse and debris. More trash, more smells, and small smatterings of mouse shit everywhere. I didn't want to sit down. She had lost both her parents as well, just 2 years after high school. She never said what happened, and I didn't ask. The more she talked, the more I realized how much I hadn't missed her. It was strange. But I felt this pull inside my brain. Something was trying to make my mind slip back into old me, and I was afraid of it. It was like being back in my hometown was bringing out the parts of me that I hated somehow. An angry thing that wanted me to grow ugly the way it had. She offered me a drink, and I accepted. I needed it. I was surprised and disgusted that she poured one for herself. She sat down. handed me my whiskey and Coke, and then sucked down half of hers. Are you sure you should be drinking?
Oh, hell. It's the only thing that quiets this little bastard down. I think he looks forward to it every night. I'm just starting early today.
She was repellent. I wanted to leave, but what she said next made me stay.
Sometimes I think we broke this town. You know? Like, Piggy took this town down the tubes with her. You remember Piggy?
That's kind of hard to forget.
God, what a bitch.
Is she still up at the hospital?
As far as anyone knows, she's still blowing spit bubbles and shitting her pants in a bed up there. Hasn't kept her from cursing this town, though.
Cursing?
Shit, Casey, look at it. Everything has just been falling apart for the last 12 years. So many people have moved away, but the ones who still live here are either sick or dying.
She laughed so hard, she jostled something loose in her throat. She snorted, and then spat out a green glob on the cover of an Old People magazine.
Did you hear what happened to Cody Baldwin?
No.
He just went nuts. He kept telling people he was being followed at night. Well, one night he was home alone. All the doors locked. He barricaded all the windows and doors with boards and nails. It took the cops an hour to get inside. They found him on his bed. Yeah, he wrote a note about something trying to get inside of his house to kill him right before he blew his own fucking head off.
My God.
Yeah, that's not even the fucked up part.
She lowered her voice.
The gun was found halfway across the room and no fingerprints were on it.
She smiled and shot back the rest of her drink. She left me in a state of shock while she got up and poured herself another whiskey. She asked me if I wanted another, and I shook my head.
Remember Simon Lucas? His brakes went out on the top of that big hill on Dawson Street and he was T-boned by an Amazon truck at the bottom. Died instantly. All kinds of weird shit happens around here. Almost half our graduating class have all died.
Then why haven't you moved?
Well, I own the house outright, and I've got an easy job at the hotel that pays enough. Maybe I'll move someday, but I've got a pretty sweet thing going here.
Yeah. I looked around her sweet thing she had going on. It was strange, as if the thought of leaving a town that might be cursed was completely alien and illogical to her. She was delusional.
Whoa. Ow.
I watched her stomach move.
Little bastard's thirsty. I'm working on it, you little shit. Jeez. His dad up and left us 2 months after I got pregnant, so I'm still working. It's been really hard on both of us.
She jumped again. I saw her stomach move twice. It looked like the kid was trying to push his way right out then and there. I had never seen a baby move that much. She told several more stories of how people I used to know died horrible deaths and then laughed about it. She was not only content, but happy to stay in this miserable place. I was reminded of the crab bucket effect. With every word she spoke and every minute I spent listening, I realized I was allowing myself to be pulled back down into this pit of this town. I had to leave. She insisted that we exchange our new numbers before I left, so I did. But I had every intention of deleting her info as soon as I took care of one more visit. It was late afternoon, but I needed to try and make things right one more time. The mental hospital was almost an hour outside town, and as soon as I left my old home behind, I instantly felt better. I inquired about Peggy at the reception desk to see if it was even possible to see her. The nurse gave me the side eye and spoke to me in a hushed tone.
She's not here anymore. Her daddy came and took her back home years ago.
Does he still live in the same house he always did?
Technically speaking, if he calls staying in a town a living, a miserable place full of miserable people.
I knocked on the door of Peggy's old house, and I waited. It was ridiculous of me to be thinking the way I was. Even if she couldn't hear me, I had to apologize to Peggy that night, because I was firm on never coming back to Oak Grove again. The door finally opened, and Peggy's father was standing there.
Can I help you?
Yes, sir, my name is Casey.
I know who you are, miss. You're one of those girls that took my baby and my grandbaby from me. I never forget a face.
Sir, I just wanted to see her, if I could. I need to apologize to her for how I treated her.
Well, this is a first. One of you coming back here to try and make yourself feel better for being such a bitch to her. Apologize, huh? Sure, why the hell not? You can just kneel there at the foot of the oak in the yard and apologize all you want. Maybe you can apologize to my granddaughter too. We spread both of their ashes down there.
She's gone?
Oh, sweetie. She died 8 years ago. I watched her just waste away in her bed until at the end, she was only a shadow of what she used to be. But you didn't ask me if she died. You asked me if she was gone. That's a harder one to answer, isn't it?
The tone in his voice became more sinister as he smiled. My skin started to crawl. I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry for my part in it. I turned to go back to my car. He grabbed my arm from behind and pulled me around.
You were smart enough to get out of town when you did. Much smarter than a lot of other people. If you're being honest with me, I want to give you some advice. Get out of here before she knows you're back. She's not one to accept apologies anymore.
By the time I had got back to my parents' house and grabbed a few things, the sun was already beginning to set. I wanted to be on the road before it got dark. I just got in my car when my phone rang. It was Hannah.
Casey, I need help.
She was crying. What's going on?
Please, help. Help.
Hannah, I have to go.
I'm scared.
The call dropped. I didn't care. I started driving away, back out of the town. I had made a mistake by coming back, and I had no intention of staying here any longer. I was stopped at the light, just on the edge of town, and it started to rain. I was at war with myself. I had spent the last 12 years trying to atone for being a cold-hearted bitch who helped destroy someone's life. And right then I was leaving town without even checking in on someone who was crying and asking me for help. The light turned green, but I didn't move. I finally turned around and headed back to Hannah's house. The rain was pouring, and the streetlights were out on Hannah's street. I had to hold on to the handrail to keep from slipping on the stairs on her porch. Her door was locked, but I could hear Hannah screaming inside. I had to break a window to get in. The smell hit me the second I set foot on her crunchy carpet. A putrid stink of rot that wafted through the house. I ran down the hall and found Hannah writhing on her bathroom floor. Her hair and skin were slicked with sweat. She was only wearing a pair of boxers and her bra. There was a discolored, chunky fluid smeared all over the tile, and I realized that her water had broken and that she had defecated.
Help me, Casey. Oh my God. It hurts.
I ran to Hannah and tried to keep her still. I put one arm behind her shoulders and held her head up. I gotcha. I'm gonna get help. Just hang on. I called 911 on my phone and told them we needed an ambulance. The operator tried to keep me on the phone, but I let it fall to the floor while I tried my best to hold on to Hannah. Her pupils were completely dilated, and her pulse was almost beating through her neck. Her stomach was spasming violently, and I could see blood starting to spot her boxers.
Casey! Casey! Please make it stop! Please make it stop!
They're on their way. You're gonna be okay. I held on to her as best as I could, but she started thrashing so wildly, and her skin was so slick, I lost my grip on her. She fell out of my arms, and the back of her head crunched as it crashed to the tile floor. She stopped moving. Oh my God! Hannah! Hannah! Her eyes were closed, and I could feel a faint pulse in her neck. Everything was quiet except for the sound of the rain. I reached for my phone, but I stopped when I heard the front door of the house open. Hello? Is somebody there? At first there was nothing, but then I heard the sound of quiet laughter. I looked down the dark hallway, but I could only see a small part of the living room and the broken window I had climbed through. Hello? Hello? Hannah's stomach started to move again. This time it was moving downward, and blood began to soak the front of her boxers. I could hear the laughter again. I picked up the phone and whispered, Please, hurry.
Miss, just stay on the phone with me. They're on their way.
Okay. Something started to move through all the filth in the front room. A bottle fell over. I heard a glass break. Then I heard a small patter that started to get louder. I saw mice, hundreds of them, running from underneath all of the garbage and out through the window that had broken. Hannah whispered my name.
Casey!
And I looked down at her worn face. I'm here.
Casey.
Another voice came from the front room. It was rough and hoarse. Someone was in there with us. I looked around the bathroom for something to defend myself with, and the only thing I could see was the shower curtain rod. I laid Hannah's head down back, slow, and stood up.
Quiet. Casey.
I ripped the rod from the wall and tore the curtain off of it. The hooks clattered to the tile, and I held the rod like a bat. I waited. The sound of Hannah's ragged breaths echoed in the bathroom, while the pounding of the rain became more intense. I waited, and waited, and waited.
Fuck! It hurts! Fuck, it hurts!
Hannah jumped off of the floor and stood up, her eyes wild and her face twisted with agony. She ran as fast as she could down the hallway towards the front room.
Help me! It's ripping! It's ripping! Help me!
Blood ran bright red down her legs and left a trail down the hallway. She disappeared from view, but I could still hear her screaming as she ran out the front door, and then I heard her fall down her front steps. Then, there was nothing but the rain. Hannah! Hannah! My heart was pounding. I got the courage to move forward. With every step, I was convinced that something I didn't want to see was going to come racing down the hall towards me. I eased my way into the front room, but there was no one there. The front door was wide open, and I walked over to it. I saw Hannah's crumpled body at the foot of the steps. She was already soaked. Everything was dark, so I found the switch by the front door and I turned it on. Her porch light flickered, and it was dim, but it was just enough light for me to see that Hannah's dead eyes were staring back at me, and her mouth was agape. Her neck was crooked, and one of her legs was broken. I could hear the siren from the ambulance in the distance. I kept looking around, making sure that no one was anywhere near me.
Quiet. Casey.
Someone was standing in the darkness across the street. I tightened my grip on the shower rod.
Only a shadow of what she used to be.
I saw Hannah's body start to move. The flesh of her stomach was stretching like a balloon that was being inflated and then deflated, over and over. Things inside of her were crushing and popping. Fabric started to rip, and then her stomach flattened as something spilled out into the dark street.
Quiet. Casey.
I will not describe what crawled out of her body because I don't want to remember it. I watched it crawl silently and deliberately across the street towards the person in the shadows. The person leaned down, picked it up, and cradled it. The ambulance finally rounded the corner onto Hannah's street, and I looked toward it with relief, knowing that someone else was coming. When I looked back across the street, the person was no longer there. As the ambulance got closer, the headlights illuminated a trail of filth that led from Hannah's body to the other side of the street. I watched it quickly vanish as it washed away by the rain. I was detained for only one night. It was determined that Hannah's death was an accident, and that she had suffered a late miscarriage due to her fall. When I was questioned by the deputies, I said nothing of what I had seen. I kept hearing that rough voice from the shadow in my head, and for once, I think I did what Peggy wanted me to do. I was quiet Casey one more time. I left the next morning, and I've never gone back. I wrote this because I need people to know what I did. I owe a debt. I'm sorry, Peggy. If you have any stories that you would like to see narrated here on the channel, please go into the subreddit and submit them there. The link is in the description. Also, we do have a Discord now. Thank you so much to Creepy Clown Girl for putting it together for us. You can come hang out with me and other narrators and get the party started, get spooky with us. That link is also in the description as well. And last but certainly not least, I wanted to introduce the King of Panic. We have a lot of brand new content coming soon with him in it. He is very talented. He does not have his own channel. He just kind of wants to be a part of this. So if you would like to hear from him once you start and you like his voice, stay tuned here. And as always, thank you for visiting the Panic Room. You have successfully made it to the next portion of your tour. Please stay tuned for your next prompt. Click the like button and subscribe to receive notifications for when the next portion of your tour is ready to join. Thank you for watching. Don't let the panic drown you.